Okay, guys, good morning. Welcome to today's session on exploring the future of work. If you're unfamiliar with me and Haymarket HQ, my name is Lauren and I'm the Community and Operations Manager at Haymarket HQ. We're a startup hub in Sydney's Chinatown, helping startups go global with a focus in the Asia Pacific. Today, we're running a session on the future of work. It's something that's very close to our experience during COVID. A lot of industries have been affected by it. We tried to learn as much from different people during that time, and we thought, why not run a seminar or a series talking about what it would look like. We've seen the effects in our space. We've seen it in other spaces as well, where we've talked to other co-working operators, startups and businesses who are deciding maybe co-working is not for them, maybe work from home is better. Today we'll be joined by Jim Groves from Rubberdesk and Galvin Davis from Here Coworking. Before we begin, I'm just gonna give you a brief introduction on who they are and what they do. So Jim is the co-founder and CEO of Rubberdesk. It's a flexible marketplace launched in 2016. The platform makes it easy for businesses to find, compare, and list their own available office space. And with flexible rental options, tenants are no longer tied into long-term leases. Rubberdesk exclusively powers commercial real estate's co-working pages and has partnered with the Cadigal Office Leasing to provide expert leasing advice. Jim brings a fresh perspective to the property market, having worked in financial markets at UBS Investment Bank for 20 years, where he was first part of an engineering team working on global trading platforms before moving to the algorithmic trading desk. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, thanks, Lauren. Yeah, you got that spot on. I think that's yeah, everything.
I'll clap on behalf of everyone because everyone's on mute.
I think it needs enough random applause.
Next, we have Galvin Scott Davis. He is the co-founder and director of Here Coworking in Piermont, a purpose-built co-working space in Sydney that houses many of Australia's leading creatives. He is also the founder and director of Protein, one of Australia's leading digital innovation agencies. As a creative director, Galvin has led projects such as the brand creation of Victor Churchill, one of Australia's most recognized culinary brands. They created the viral TikTok Tricks campaign with YouTube star Zach King, which aggregated more than 68 million views and has produced award-winning digital innovation brands such as the Walmart company and ASICS. Galvin is also a published author and rep in LA as a writer-director for film and television. His agency Protein are one of the many creative companies who reside at Here Coworking, forming the Here Collective. Galvin's manifesto, The Future of Co-working Post-COVID-19, was referenced by Yahoo Finance in their interview with him regarding the future of co-working. Matt, welcome, Galvin.
Hello.
So I mentioned the manifesto that Galvin wrote for Here Collective, for Here Coworking, and it's actually one of the things that we referenced when we were deciding on what to do and how we think the future of work would look like. So this is going to be a short and sweet session. We'll be asking a few questions. For those who are watching, if you have any questions, just put it in the comments and we'll have a look at the end of the panel. If we can go through some of them, if Jim and Galvin has any advice or can help answer some of your biggest questions about the future of work. Okay, let's start with the basics first. What have been the biggest changes or impacts in the way we work and in the industry? Maybe Jim, you can start. Like looking at, you see all aspects of work at Rubberdesk with every different listing coming up. What have you seen was the biggest change or impact?
Well, obviously, I mean, it's the obvious things about people going home to work, and so surrendering often where they're able to their leases or licenses or their rentals in city spaces. So there's been a bit of a contraction in the real estate market, and I think probably the biggest impact or the biggest change is the amount of uncertainty. The level of uncertainty in the market has just increased dramatically. One of the impacts of that, I guess, is that when people are uncertain, they kind of go and try to make shorter term decisions. You don't want to be planning for 5-10 year, putting together 5-10 year plans when you don't really know what the next 3 or 6 months are going to hold. And so I think with COVID and the level of uncertainty that we're seeing at the moment, people are turning to, in the office space world, and in terms of how we work within office space, are turning to look for more flexible solutions. So that's everything from larger businesses that are coming to the end of their lease, just sitting out of the leasing market, and perhaps not trying to sign a 3 or 5 year lease, but looking at something a bit shorter term, a bit more flexible, or trying to take more space locally near to where their employees live. Those sorts of themes. I guess that's the two of the bigger themes that we're seeing at the moment. The increase in uncertainty and driving the desire for more flexibility.
Galvin, what did you see as the impact in your co-working space? Like, you're surrounded by a lot of individuals and teams and creatives. What has been the change during when the lockdown started happening and now that everyone's starting to come back?
Yeah, I mean, look, as soon as lockdown happened or work from home happened, what we saw was the need for support more than anything else. I think, co-working, as I've discussed before, was founded on community. And I think over time that's become more about finance and monopoly. So I think the feeling of community was something that, as work from home occurred, the co-working spaces had to change or had to alter and pivot in terms of being able to support their members. I think the initial work from home was quite tempting for people. And certainly as a business, we had to start looking at new flexible options that we might be able to put forward. And then as we've seen everything coming out of work from home, we can see that really the big shift is that working from home just drives a need for human connection and a feeling of isolation. So we've found that there's been a big shift back towards people really needing to get back into the space. So we only lost 5% of our members over COVID, which was good. Really partly good. Because of, and look, partly because of the amount of support, not just from us as a business, but from the community themselves. But to Jim's point, the biggest shift we're seeing outside in terms of the audience is that mostly our co-working was made up of individual sole traders, people that have small businesses and small teams. But now we're getting lots of inquiries from people that are employed by big companies who have this rift between working from home and the kind of the distraction of working from home and the chaos of the office. And they're coming to us individually or through the businesses to say, I don't want to be in the office. I don't want to be at home. I need something as a third place. That's the biggest change we're seeing.
What were some of the things you did? You said you people came back to wanting to get that community feel. At that time, they were probably working from home. What were some of the things you did to kind of build that community and making sure that they still got that?
Yeah, I mean, again, touching on what Jim said, I mean, there are short-term and long-term thinking. For the tenants, for the members, really, they had to think short-term initially, just, how we're going to survive. As a business, we had to think long-term. So what we did see is a lot of the larger co-working businesses were locking people into their contracts. No negotiations. If you'd signed a year's contract a week before work from home, you were stuck with that. Fortunately, because we're a smaller space and we're selective, so we actually interview people. It's not a space for everyone. It's a space for people that want to be involved with the community. We took 2 steps. The first was to say we took a very quick decision, regardless of what the landlord was going to do a deal with us on, to say we'll freeze your memberships and you won't have to pay anything during COVID. We don't know how long it will go for, but when you come back, if you could just give us a 3-month lease. So we decided that we would take the risk, but the payback would be when they came back. They gave us some sense of security with a 3-month lease. Alternatively, we said for businesses that are actually doing quite well, we'll give you an option to pay 50% of your rent whilst COVID is on, whether it goes for a month or 3 months or 6 months. And when you come back, you'll be on 50% for the same amount of time. So effectively, again, they weren't paying for any of COVID, but it was spread across as risk management. And I think that's part of the reason why we were able to retain so many members was, everybody supported everybody. And that was really what the pandemic was about, really.
Yeah, I agree. Like everyone, all the businesses needed that support, and I'm sure they appreciated it. It's something similar we did at Haymarket HQ. We gave them some free rent for 3 months, and then just made this. We didn't completely close down during that period for those who
No, same
weren't
here.
weren't able to work from home. They were able to come in, and we made sure we had a safe space for them to work from. And I think it's also the reason why most of them have returned. And because who else are they going to rely on to support, except within the community, right? So I agree with those points.
Yeah,
I think that's an interesting one in terms of the, you know, the rent freeze or the membership freeze option, and that's just a really appealing one to businesses that are going through that and going, look, I'm going to be at home. We have to be at home. We're advised to. Having that as an option has been really appealing to businesses. And individuals, freelancers, and the like, and who use these co-working spaces for that sense of community. So, and that's something that we've seen across the board largely, that has been applied, and that's what's been really good for the industry. In terms of, you know, I'm a big industry advocate for co-working and the flexibility that it provides its members, whether it be, you know, 1 or 2 desks or office space for 5 people. But that flexibility has been is what sets co-working and the flexible office space industry apart from the leased office space business, where there are government incentives around rent deferrals and rent-free periods. But it's been a lot harder work for companies, for tenants to get that back from their landlords than has often been the case for co-working amongst the operators.
Great. Just moving forward now. Jim, you Rubberdesk released a report on the future of flexible workspace. Can you just share some of the trends, like the main trends that you saw that you shared in that report, so everybody else can know about it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's quite a lot. There's a fair bit in there. So what we've seen is a huge growth in the availability of office space, which has really come from, and when we talk about office space, we talk largely about flexibility and flexible office space. So it comes from 2 sources. Rubberdesk is a bit like Airbnb for traditional businesses that have spare office space to rent it out. And so that accounts for about 1/3. Traditional businesses with just surplus and spare office space that they rent out accounts for about 1/3 of the available office space that we have on Rubberdesk in Australia. And then the co-working operators account for 2/3 of the amount of office space. And that's been growing steadily over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, actually longer. But the real ramp up has been over the last 3 or 4 years. And it's accounting for a significant proportion of the available office space in Australia right now. So when you look at what's available, the Property Council of Australia and the other industry bodies talk about vacant office space. And that is, if you go and you're trying to buy a property or you're trying to lease a property, what is currently empty. But it doesn't include co-working and flexible office space in those statistics. And if it did, then the numbers would be dramatically higher. There's, you know, in Australia, it's counting for 6% availability versus what's recently quoted as 3 or 4%. So it's a huge amount of office space which is available for flexible use, offices and desks, be it in a shared space or amongst the co-working operators. We did some analysis looking at the state-by-state analytics, looking at the office sizes and how they compare. And we've got averages to work out what the average desk rate is in an open plan office, which is around $500 right now. It was a lot higher. And then if you taking desks in an office or a private office, it's around $650 per person per month. And so there's a few drivers that go behind that. There's, you know, the location, the quality of the fit out, the quality of the building, all these sorts of things that add up to it. But what we found was that the diversity and the spectrum of available spaces that we have to rent in Australia flexibly by the month or 3 months or 6 months or whatever it be is huge. And it's not just black or white. It's not just premium high-end fit outs in CBD properties. It's everything all the way to small offices in suburban areas. And so it's really, there's a really huge amount of choice out there for people to look at.
Has there been an increase or decrease of people signing up in Rubberdesk looking for spaces, or like there's an increase of people putting their available flexible office space in there, but has there been an increase or decrease in specific type of office space that people are looking for?
Yeah, so in terms of the space coming onto the platform, that's increased dramatically, as you might expect, as people try and monetize their available spaces. And so that's gone up to about 250,000 square meters of office space that we have on the platform now around Australia. And in terms of the demand side, people looking for office space, well, that took a real hit and went to a real low point in April, when realistically everybody was at home and nobody was looking for office space. And we started to see that pick up. So look, we're not back up. We're about half of where we were, half of the number of inquiries of where we were back in February, and it's trending back up. But it's still very depressed compared to the start of the year and late last year. What we are seeing trend-wise is an increase in demand for suburban locations. And I think that points to this appetite to work near home rather than work from home. And we're also seeing corporates and bigger companies looking for foothold space, which is or drop-in space, where they might take offices for 10 or 20 staff, 10 or 20 desks, and rotate their staff through that location. So have up to 40 staff using it, but on a rota basis. So those are I guess the big changes that we've seen, definitely.
Great, that's some really good insights from that report. We might share that with the viewers if you don't mind.
Yeah, drop a link on the.
We'll send a link to everybody. Looking at the time, we have 10 minutes left. I have a few more questions that maybe Galvin, you can give us some input on.
Sure.
Maybe moving forward, for people who are trying to decide what would be the best option for them, like, can you just share what the pros and cons are of dedicated office space, co-working, and work from home, just to kind of give a distinction for each one? And like, given COVID-19 is not going to go away anytime soon.
And look, sorry, I was going to say, and obviously I have a bias.
Yeah, same, me too.
And for anybody that doesn't know, Haymarket HQ and here Co-working are very aligned in terms of why we started our businesses and what we spent our money on in terms of where we positioned those businesses. So I am biased. We don't tend to, for instance, we don't tend to have businesses that are more than, say, 6 people. So we do tend to have small pockets of individual traders, duos, 4 people, 6 people, and then those clusters make up a community who support and help each other. We don't tend to get businesses that want 10 and 20 desks. And in fact, the businesses that come to us that do have 20 desks, we say we're not the space for you because you're going to dominate the space. So, just to answer your question of the way people work, and I think really the most important thing that we're seeing during COVID and I think post-COVID is mental well-being. So at the moment, there are, for most people, not for everybody, but for most people, there are 2 choices, which is you work from home or you go back to the office and you work in the office. And both of them have pros and cons. For introverts, working from home is fantastic. And I think for anybody, the first few weeks of it, you get the chance to be a bit more flexible with your time, et cetera, et cetera. But what we've seen is that as the time has gone along, people are finding they're working longer hours. They're working stranger hours because they might take some time out during the day and then they're working later at night. Or their husband or wife might have to work from home as well, and suddenly there's distractions, or one of the kids is sick and they have to stay from home. So the pros of working from home are the flexibility. The cons are that there are a lot of distractions. On the other hand, there's then the office if you're working for a company. And when you go to office, there's now the trepidation of going back into that management kind of bubble. And also people are very worried about hygiene. So Then in the middle, you have co-working. And what we're seeing is for businesses of our size and Haymarket HQ, the first thing that we've noticed is we've had to really change in terms of our regulations. So obviously we have to adhere to as many regulations as possible, but our focus is mental well-being. What we're seeing more and more and more is, and you can see there's plenty of studies online, is that people are really struggling with work from home and the office and having no alternatives. So we believe that co-working, the benefits of co-working are that you get to escape that home or work environment to have a third place. And that third place, we believe, should have plenty of space, large desks, sunlight, fresh air, all the things that are COVID considerate, and a community of people that can support each other. This is the time where people really need to support each other. We believe, and I don't think it's controversial, but we believe that there's no room for overcrowded, tiny, small, highly congested spaces. We believe the big co-working spaces are going to have to change. They're going to have to alter to accommodate people because people are scared of being amongst too many people. But at the same time, there is a loneliness and there is an isolation, and mental well-being is going down. Domestic violence at home is going up. All these negatives are coming out of this, I guess, this disparate situation where people don't know where they belong. So we hopefully, I believe, and I think Australia lead the way in co-working, in my opinion as well, is that what will happen is the co-working companies will be seen as a respite, as an escape, as a retreat from the only two options that you have. And hopefully somewhere along the way, they'll get to meet new people, form new relationships. And again, I know Haymarket HQ is exactly the same. You will then have a community of people that in hard times like this are able to work with each other, talk to each other, support each other, and the mental well-being values of that space will be invaluable to everybody. That's my biased opinion.
Great points, Galvin. Jim, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, that's I agree that working from home was appealing to some, and to be fair, on occasion is still appealing to people, and that flexibility is appealing. I've said this before that we've just been through the biggest remote working experiment ever globally, and it's worked. It's worked really well. The technology level has been raised, and the communications level has been raised almost to the point of annoyingness with Zoom meetings, etc. But it's been raised, and it's just now at a level of where everybody has access to it. It's been democratized, so that's been fantastic. That everybody can now do it, and employers who have been previously against remote working have come round and now starting to offer it. But the loneliness and the isolation that Galvin talks about, and that mental health well-being aspect is huge, and that's a massive consideration. So I think the impact of that is this idea that and Galvin talks about a third space, which resonates with me and certainly with lots of people at the moment, in terms of having that opportunity to drop into a centre, to be around other like-minded people, to catch up with other employees from the same company at the same location, and to be able to have that sort of that space to go to is hugely important, and that's where I guess we're seeing. And I think it means that the big CBD footprint HQ is going to contract a little bit, because bearing in mind, I know that there's different types of companies out there, but small and large, but certainly for the bigger and sort of medium enterprise, their CBD trophy headquarters will reduce in size because it doesn't have to accommodate everybody, and then they'll have more disparate locations for people to drop into and work from.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Those are really great feedback. Just looking at the time now, do we have any questions from the audience? We're happy to unmute you if you have any questions, or you can put it in the chat. None at the moment?
I think Alan wants to ask a question.
Okay, Alan, yeah, the floor is yours.
Sorry,
Has he
Alan.
unmuted himself? Okay. Well, if we have no questions, just one more before we head off. what would be one piece of advice that you'll give businesses who are still undecided and who want to limit the risks?
The risks of
Going into the office, COVID, and limiting the risk for their businesses.
The piece of advice would be to, I don't know about limiting risks, because I think every workplace is managing COVID risks, and that's important. Look for places that strike the balance for a healthy and safe working environment, as well as the healthy mindful space that gets the teams together. I think finding workspaces are going to be about more collaborative and touch points for businesses, rather than just a place to go and sit at a desk.
Cool.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you just said. That's exactly what people should be doing. And the other thing is to trial. Go to different places and trial them. A lot of times people don't look beyond what they've been told in terms of brands that might be out there or the closest one to them. But most co-working spaces do a free trial day. Go and try 4 or 5 of them and see which one suits you best, because there is, and I'm stealing your line from yesterday, Jim, but there is no one size fits all. Our space is right for many people and not right for many people, as would the bigger brands, as would any co-working space. But the only way to find that out is to go there, is to meet the community, feel the space, and just trial them out. Find out which one makes you want to go to work, which one makes you want to go to the space each day. And that's the most valuable thing. I wouldn't concentrate too much on price, to be perfectly honest with you, because I don't know how much. I think you can't put a value on mental well-being and the ability to be able to be productive. And I think often that's where people get caught up, is they're trying to get $10 less than another place, and you split that $10 across a month, and you're really arguing about less than a cup of coffee to be in a space that you want to be in. I would focus on whether the community in the space feels good to you, whether it will make you productive and help you out from a mental well-being point of view, and choose that space.
Great. I think that's a good place to wrap up this session. Thank you, Jim and Galvin, for your time this morning, and for everybody who stayed, woke up early to listen to this session. We have another one next week, talking more about safety and feeling safe in going back to the office, what people are doing, what considerations are businesses thinking of. So if you want to learn more, we'll be promoting it around all our social media as well. This video will be shared, so if you want to share with someone in your team or some people you know, feel free to do so. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. See ya.